This is my most anticipated read of the year, and I found it just so disappointing. I sat down and was like, okay, I'm gonna read one chapter before I go to bed. I read the entire thing. This is book one of a trilogy. Welcome back, YA Trilogies. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm Rhea, this is Ray Reads, and today we're gonna be ranking 2025 YA releases. Around like the 30-something YA books I read last year, 20 of them were new, and like 3 or 4 of them were from 2024. So I have been reading a lot of new releases. Preface this, I have around 20 YA releases out of 2025, and then there's one release that comes out 2026. Let's go through like the tiers. I know there are 5 tiers, but that's not necessarily like 5-star. Top tier is everything I've ever wanted. Yay is like why keep reading. Good Not Great, and that's kind of based off of the Dance Moms sound. It's like great, but there's something that's holding it back. Neutral, I don't feel passionate in either direction. They just kind of exist. Fumble is what I don't know what we're doing here. Type fumble. I'm not gonna speak too much about the premise or the plot of these books. I'm gonna try to be brief. If you're interested in knowing about the premise and my more in-depth thoughts, be sure to check out my wrap-ups. We're going chronologically. The first 2025 release I read this year was actually an arc, and that's Ethereal Dreaming by Ava Reed. I'm gonna put that in neutral. And I read the first book, A Study in Drowning, last summer of 2024, and I wasn't sure if I was going to continue with this sequel, but I got the arc, so I might as well. And it was a fun time. I just don't really care. If you're thinking about continuing the series, I would say if you like the characters, do, but I don't think it's like a great dark academia or anything. I feel neutral about it. And the next 2025 release I also read was Fable for the Underworld. I'm gonna put that in Good Not Great. This is also by Avery, and this is also an arc. This is February. This is before my Hunger Games phase, and I was just so excited. The author basically wrote this as like a love letter to the Hunger Games, and that's very exciting to me. I really enjoyed this book at the time and the conversations it was having between the class differences and like the characters. I don't really like the ending, and I wish that this was a series and that we could have done more with this. So, still a fun time. Not my favorite. Next book I read that's a release is Sunrise in the Reaping. I'm also gonna put that in Good Not Great. This is my most anticipated read of the year, and I found it just so disappointing and so blatant. This one, I told you what the messages were, and that was not as fun for me, but I also don't think the way it handled those messages was that deep, and I don't understand why it was in Haymitch's point of view. I had a great time reading it. Like, genuinely the most amazing reading experience of my life, and watch my reading vlog. It's so fun. The next one I have on this list is The Survivor Wants to Die at the End, and I'm also gonna put that in Good Not Great. Well, maybe not a great stretch for me. This is the 3rd book in the They Both Die at the End series, Deathcast series, and I thought this was a cool installment of the series because it turns the premise on its head. The first 2 books only follows one day, but this book follows more than that. We actually delve in these characters in this world a little bit more. However, this book's 700 pages, and it's pretty much just a setup for the next book, which I think is so stupid. Like, 700 pages and nothing happening in this book is crazy. But I will be seated for the next one, so hopefully that one's better. Okay, next I have is Fake Skating, and I got the arc of this book. Such a fun time for me. I love Better Than the Movies, Nothing Like the Movies, and this book is just like a worse version of that in the best way possible. It's like this book was made for me. It follows childhood besties to lovers, and there's fake dating. It takes place in like this small town in Minnesota, and the characters just have really great chemistry, except for the last third is like way too dramatic for me, but other than that, I do recommend this. The next one is Voyager of Fate, and that also goes in Yay, and I read pretty much all the other books in this Legends of Lorien series world thing, and I was excited for this one, and it was really fun. I really liked Elizabeth Lim's main characters and their whole journeys because it's like fun but stressful at the same time, and our main character is actually like pretty smart. This takes place underwater, and there's dragons, an arranged marriage situation, and I just wasn't in love with the romance because it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. The next book I have is Wild Reverence. This is technically an adult book, but it's a prequel to a young adult duology, so I figured I'd put this in because it has the same demographic. Divine Rivals is one of my favorite books of 2023. I also have a copy here. I got the arc for Wild Reverence and I was so excited, and this one didn't really work for me. I also loved In River Enchanted, and I think this is just a worse version of that. So definitely if you like this, go check out River Enchanted. But I just didn't feel connected to the characters or the pacing or anything. Like, this is a story about an immortal goddess. Typically with those stories, you kind of know the mythology a little bit beforehand. And this one, I just kind of didn't care about any of the gods. It's a very slight connection to Divine Rivals, and I'm not mad about that. Don't feel like you have to read Divine Rivals before you read this. The next book I have is Heartsick. This is sad because this is one of my most anticipated reads of the year, and before this, Christina Forrest was probably my favorite YA rom-com author. Heartsick has like a really ambitious plot. The plot involves this drug that can make you lose your feelings for somebody, and my first thought immediately went to Eternal Sunshine. And we don't really do that much with that. It's not really like part of the plot, and I just don't understand why you would introduce that if you're not gonna do anything with that, because I actually thought the chemistry between the characters, it's a second chance romance, it's pretty nice, but the plot was just way too convoluted and deep for this story about these characters. Next up we have The River She Became, which is everything I've ever wanted. I got the arc, and this actually comes out in April 2026, and I read it because I really enjoyed the author's debut novel that I read last year too. This is romantasy done right. Like, we have a strong female main character, we have a prince, male main character, they're both going to work together, they're both fighting against depression. It's my favorite book to recommend as a kind of response to other kind of romantasies because there's no weird power imbalance between the couple. I'm so excited for the sequel. Honestly, the worst thing about this book is that I have to wait for the sequel. Next up, okay, I know I have like all of these. I literally read all of these in December, so if you're interested, please go check out my December wrap-up. The first one I read was The House of Fear. I love Marissa Meyer. I love Renegades. I love the Rune Chronicles, and I've been reading all of her stuff, and lately I haven't been loving it, so this was kind of like my big make or break to decide if I was going to continue reading with Marissa Meyer, and unfortunately this one is not going to keep me going because it's about like witches and ghosts and Victorian settings, and it's like gothic. This is like a YA book. Like, if you are on the fence about YA, do not pick up this book. It has like fun things about YA, but pretty much it has like all the things I don't like about YA also in there. So I feel neutral about it. The next book I read was The Scammer, and this is also one of my most anticipated of the year. I'm gonna put this in neutral, but I felt like pretty good throughout the entire book, up until the ending. The ending is a fumble, and I'm really trying to decide how to rate thrillers because I don't think it should totally depend on the ending, even though that's like what I think about when I think about thrillers. But everything leading up to the ending was really good, and I read this book in one sitting. Like, I sat down and was like, okay, I'm gonna read one chapter before I go to bed. I read the entire thing. Like, this book is addicting, and I love that. I read all of this author's books in one sitting. So if you're reading this book, just don't read the last chapter, and it'll be so much better. Next one I read was Andre and Bastard Just Friends, and I'm also going to put this in neutral. I've read Tia Williams before in 7 Days of June, and this involves the daughter of one of the main characters in that. And I thought this was fine. Like, they had enough chemistry. It takes place in New York. New York wasn't really a setting. I wasn't like in love with them as a couple. I thought the setup of them like teaming up was like weird, and the stuff they did together was kind of random. Like, I wish there was more of a plot. My favorite part of the book was not the romance, so that's just kind of disappointing when that happens, but it's not bad, it's just fine. Next up, I read A First Time for Everything. I put in yay. Like, this is a solid romance, and honestly, more than that, it's a solid contemporary, which I really appreciate in any kind of YA or romance or anything. Here we have a teenage girl who's like experiencing dating for the first time, which sounds like a weird premise, but I just love how much empathy we give the main character, and nobody in the book was like pressuring this girl to do anything. and nobody was like offended by the decision she made in her love triangle. Like, it's not that deep. And I thought this is cute, and it has a wedding setting. I'm not obsessed with like the love interest in this book. Next book I have is Wings of Starlight. I'm a huge Pixie Hollow fan, but the last thing I think about when I think about Pixie Hollow is like a romance. I never was into Secret in the Wings. I was never obsessed with Clarion and Mallory. So this one I didn't really care about. I think the world building of Pixie Hollow is really cool because it takes this children's setting and puts like a white twist to it so that there's like depth to the world. I really didn't care about the main character Clarion or like any of their like tragic romance stuff. Next up we have The Rose Bargain. Everything I've ever wanted. Like Faye. Bring back Faye. Last time I read Faye was in 2022, way too long ago. And we have Bridgerton times Faye, so it brings that like Regency era, that kind of pressure from society, that pacing, that cool setting. We have the selection type trials with the prince. She's in a love triangle between this guy who she's supposed to want to marry and also this guy who gets on her nerves but also challenges her. This book is like what I love about YA, and I just think the pacing is really good and the characters. Every part of this book just mixes together really well to give me that YA perfection. As of today, I've already read the sequel, and I'm planning on filming a review for that soon, and that will be out in April. So I'm just saying, YA fantasy is back. Next book I read is Never Ever After. Never Ever After is a loose Cinderella retelling, and I describe this as like stressful fantasy. And I just had a lot of fun with the main character because she actually was like smart, and she gets stuck in the palace, but she tries to like maneuver her way out. And the tension in this book was so good. Not in love with a love triangle. This is the first book of a series, and I'm obsessed to see where it goes. Next up we have Falling Like Leaves, which is also everything I've ever wanted. This takes place in this small town that is the epitome of fall, has every single fall event ever. Almost every chapter takes place in like a different fall event. Like, are you kidding me? And the main character gets paired up with like her love interest and like apple picking and pumpkin carving. Like, sign me up. I love the cozy vibes, love the chemistry between the two leads. This is just a take on city girl goes to small town and rethinks her whole life after meeting a boy. Next book I read was Under the Same Stars, which I'm gonna put in neutral. And this involves 3 different timelines throughout history, and there's like a mystery throughout all of them. The mystery just gets revealed to you at the end by one person who just like monologues about what happened, and I found it disappointing because I wanted to connect all 3 timelines myself. It tries to compare 1940s Germany, 1980s Germany, and 2020s New York, and as somebody who's lived through 2020s, I think it's just too soon to think about that as like a historic time. Especially compared to like the 1940s. Next up we have The Thrashers, which is Fumble. It's one of my worst books I read in 2025. It tries to be edgy and like mysterious and cool. There's like a popular friend group and you're trying to figure out like what's beneath the surface, but we don't really get an answer. And this is book 1 of a series, which I didn't know going into this. And the main character's a doormat. A Language of Dragons goes in yay. This brings me back to YA fantasy. She's also in like this setting that's like working for the government with all these other kids, and it gave me like Naturals vibes. It's dark academia, so she like questions the whole system she's been raised to believe in, and I found that aspect really fun. And the dragons are really fun. And this is book 1 of a trilogy. Welcome back, YA trilogies. The last one is Immortal Consequences, and I'm gonna put this in Fumble because this involves 6 perspectives, and I only cared about 1.5. That boy was true yarner, and I loved reading his parts. So that's my list. I think my most anticipated ones of the year are obviously Sunrise and the Reaping, and then I was excited for April Reads and Fake Skating and Forgery of Fate and The River She Became and Sarah Runs and Wild Reverence and The House of Fear and Scammer and Heartsick. So basically basically like this entire like line situation. These are all my anticipated books, so clearly there's a range. An amazing year for 2025 releases. Having 3 favorites is insane. I know I have 3 books in the bottom category, but those are like at different levels of fumble. You know, I'd say the only one that like truly I hate is the Thrashers. As you can see, a lot are neutral, some mixed, and some that are like really fun. If we're going through this list to see what I'm going to continue, I'm not continuing with the Mortal Consequences or Thrashers. I will be reading more from Christina Forrest and Tiffany D. Jackson. I'm not going to read more Marissa Meyer unless it's the 4th Renegades book. I will be reading more Rebecca Ross. Avery has a new book coming out this year, but it's like gothic, so I don't know if I'm going to pick that up. I will be continuing with the Deathcast series and the Hunger Games, because I think we're getting another book. I wish Fable for the End of the World got a sequel. Language of Dragons, I'm very excited to read the sequel, and Never Ever After, I think is getting a sequel. But First Time for Everything, her entire catalog, I think they're all connected in some way. For this book, one of the characters is the love interest for her book coming out this year, which I think is so fun. For GFA, I mean, Elizabeth Lim is coming out with Wishbone Cinderella this year, and I'm so excited for that. I know Lynn Painter is working on her new book, which is like academic rivals in a boarding school, and that sounds great, but I don't think it's gonna come out this year. Hopefully, Bramble Falls comes out with more books. I need it, especially in the fall. I need it. The Rose Bargain, like I said, I've already read the sequel, and stay tuned for my thoughts on that. The River She Became, which sequel is coming out, I believe, next year. Another series this year that we're going to be getting more books from is Scythe, and I love Scythe and Thunderhead, and I'm disappointed in this whole. I started rereading it at the end of last year, and then I remembered the Neil Schusterman announced that he's gonna write his prequel trilogy, and the first book is coming out this year, so I'm gonna say my reread for that. We're gonna dive into Scythe, and we're gonna dive into how the first and second books are amazing, how the third book is disappointing. We're gonna dive into a new series and see how it compares. The other book that I want to be confirmed this year is Renegades #4, which I don't even know when we got confirmed there's gonna be another Renegades book. I want it. Like, I literally started reading those books in 2016. And I know there's a whole conversation about 2016 coming back. Like, come on, Renegades. Renegades, come back, please. I love the first 2 books. Genuinely, Arch Enemies, beautiful. Chef's Kiss. I love YA. Supernova. This is not an ending. This is not an ending. And she confirmed on like her podcast years ago that she's working on a 4th Renegades book, and it's confirmed. Like, it's confirmed. And I didn't want to say anything until we get like actual something, but she keeps putting out books that aren't Renegades, and I just want answers. This is not the ending. This is not the ending. But that's it for this video about ranking 2025 releases. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you enjoyed my rant about 2026 releases. Thank you so much for watching. Please like the video, comment below, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Instagram.